Welcome to this explainer. Gnosticism is absolutely one of the most fascinating paradoxes in all of ancient history. It was this early religious movement that was heavily, and I mean heavily, documented and criticized by its orthodox rivals in the first few centuries of our era. But here's the crazy part. Despite literal volumes of ancient texts attacking them, they are virtually a ghost in the archaeological record. We know for a fact they existed, but their physical footprints, they're almost completely missing.
Think of this as a 2,000-year-old cold case. I mean, if we have all these ancient polemics pointing to a massive, highly influential philosophical movement within early Christianity, why is the physical proof of these people so incredibly elusive? It makes you wonder, right? Did they leave symbolic remains? Or were their icons just designed to be completely indistinguishable from the cultures around them?
To really grasp the absolute headache archaeologists face here, consider this brilliant observation from scholar Ion Culianu. He totally hit the nail on the head regarding the utter confusion surrounding this topic. Basically, since the 17th century, the term Gnosticism has been used as this massive catch-all to describe so many different movements, heresies, and philosophies that pinning down a specific physical artifact seems almost impossible. If literally everything and its opposite can be called Gnostic, well, how do we physically identify anything as actually belonging to them?
Okay, Section 1. Who were the Gnostics? The chameleon movement. Before we start digging for physical evidence, we really need to define the suspects in our historical investigation. Who actually were these ancient Christian Gnostics?
Well, it all starts with the Greek word gnosis. Stemming way back to ancient philosophers like Plato, gnosis isn't about blind faith at all. It basically translates to true knowledge. Imagine waking up one day and realizing you've just found the lost instruction manual to reality. That's what we're talking about here. The very core of this movement was a deeply personal quest to reclaim that understanding, a divine knowledge that they believed humanity once possessed, but it tragically lost along the way. And that leads us right into their core philosophy, which is dualism. The Gnostics believed in a strict cosmic divide. On one side, you have the material world, which they viewed as this evil, flawed trap ruled by an ignorant creator deity known as the demiurge. But then, on the other side, you have the pure spiritual realm, the pleroma, governed by a totally unknowable supreme deity. Their ultimate goal? To awaken that divine spark within themselves and completely escape the physical world. So here is the absolutely crucial difference. Unlike their Orthodox contemporaries, who were busy building rigid institutions, standardized dogma, and literal physical church buildings, Gnosticism was really more of a chameleon movement. They didn't have a centralized church. Instead, they adapted existing myths from Jewish, Greek, and Egyptian traditions, focusing entirely on a highly personal inner quest. And because they fluidly adapted the symbols that were already around them, they became practically invisible to later archaeologists. Moving on to Section 2, Clues in Text and Tombs. Investigating the record. Now that we know exactly who we're looking for, this decentralized, highly adaptable group of spiritual seekers, let's go ahead and open up the evidence locker to review the artifacts that scholars have been debating over for decades. Based on a famous 1978 conference at Yale called The Rediscovery of Gnosticism, scholars generally categorize our suspected artifacts into 5 specific types. We're looking at inscriptions, papyri, sculptures, paintings, and small finds. As we go through these, you'll see pretty quickly that some are firm matches, while others are, well, fiercely debated. Let's actually dive into the papyri first. When you look at the abstracted geometry from things like the Bruce Codex, you have to remember something important. If you're part of a religious group that completely rejects the physical world, your art isn't exactly going to look realistic, right? It's going to look highly abstract. These kinds of geometric diagrams were likely used as esoteric meditative tools. Believers would use them alongside these long, chanted strings of vowel sounds to actually induce a trance-like state, all with the goal of connecting with the divine order. What's fascinating is that these texts also contained what are basically cosmic passports. Ancient writings reveal that a deceased disciple would actually memorize and present specific geometric seals, like the linear seal of baptism, to celestial gatekeepers. By presenting the right seal along with a specific name and number, they believed the soul could safely navigate past the hostile powers of the material universe and make its way all the way back to the supreme deity. That brings us to Section 3, the cultic artifact lineup, controversial findings. Because as you'll see, when we step away from the texts and start looking at physical monuments like sculptures or paintings, the identifications become significantly more controversial.
For example, take Roman tomb paintings like the ones found in Ville Manzoni. For years, scholars have just gone back and forth arguing over what exactly is being depicted. Some say, oh, it's just a traditional Roman myth. Others argue it's a Gnostic interpretation of Adam and Eve. And still others believe it depicts a specific Gnostic creation scene featuring the demiurge himself. Because the Gnostics borrowed so heavily from surrounding cultures, it's incredibly difficult to definitively prove a painting like this belongs exclusively to them. But then we find items like a certain striking alabaster bowl. The inside shows figures surrounding a coiled serpent. And what's wild is that this perfectly matches a frankly horrifying account written by an ancient rival of the Gnostics. This writer described a sect that would literally coax a live snake out of a box to wallow in their communion bread before they consumed it, genuinely believing the snake offered a perfect Thanksgiving. It's an incredible, almost chilling potential match between a hostile historical text and a surviving physical artifact.
All right, Section 4, magic gems and the demiurge, the small finds. Next, we arrive at what I think are the wildest, most heavily debated artifacts in the entire archaeological record: magical talismans and engraved gemstones. These gems bring us face to face with that Gnostic concept of the demiurge we talked about earlier. According to their mythology, a divine being named Sophia accidentally created a flawed, arrogant, and ignorant creator deity through a cosmic mistake. This deity, often called Yaldabaoth, was described as an arrogant beast resembling a lion. And sure enough, we find these strange ancient gems scattered across history featuring a lion-headed anthropomorphic figure, wielding supreme power over the material realm. What makes certain pieces, like a specific green jasper gem from the Brummer collection, such compelling candidates for genuine Gnostic archaeology? Well, it's not just the lion head. It is explicitly inscribed with the names of 7 angelic beings, names like Yaldabaoth and Io, exactly as they are described in the ancient texts that tried to destroy them. It's honestly like finding a fingerprint at a 2,000-year-old crime scene. You'll also frequently find a figure known as a Braxax on these ancient gems. He usually features a rooster's head, snake feet, a shield, and a whip. In certain Gnostic systems, Abraxax was the ruler of the 365 archons. However, pinning these completely bizarre talismans strictly to Gnostics remains a fierce scholarly debate, mostly because we rarely know the original archaeological context in which they were actually found. Now for Section 5, Hidden in Plain Sight. Cosmic maps. To truly understand why their artifacts look so bizarre and honestly why they are so hard to track down, we have to look at how the Gnostics mapped the entire universe. Reconstructions of what's known as the Ophite diagram show the Gnostic worldview perfectly. They viewed Earth as being at the center, sure, but it was essentially a cosmic prison. Surrounding Earth were concentric planetary spheres, and each sphere was guarded by an ignorant, animal-faced ruler, an archon, whose entire job was trying to prevent the divine human spark from escaping back to the stars. And enclosing this entire material trap was the thick black line of the Ouroboros, the world snake, sometimes called Leviathan or Behemoth. This snake literally physically separated the flawed physical creation from the divine infinite pleroma outside of it. When you realize they saw the physical world as a literal prison guarded by monsters, it makes total sense that their artwork was heavily focused on passwords, escape routes, and abstract maps, rather than, say, pretty landscapes. So, here is the ultimate takeaway. The Gnostics didn't leave a neat, uniform material culture for archaeologists to dig up, precisely because their entire philosophy was about transcending the material world. They possessed what you might call a parasitic mythology, meaning they fluidly adapted the religious symbols of the Romans, Greeks, and Orthodox Christians around them, secretly injecting their own hidden meanings into those popular everyday symbols. Which leaves us with one final, kind of haunting thought to wrap up this explainer. If the Gnostics deliberately designed their icons to hide seamlessly within the dominant culture, constantly shifting and adapting to avoid detection while preserving their secret knowledge, what ancient Gnostic symbols might be hiding in plain sight in our world right now?